Okay, Sam, I think we can make a start now. If everyone's joined for now. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Growing Diversity Project's webinar on supporting and engaging with volunteers in community tree nurseries. And for those of you who are new to our events, I'm Hilary and I'm the project coordinator. This project is a partnership between the Woodland Trust and Fellowship of the Trees, and it's supported by the Forestry Commission's Tree Production Innovation Fund. And I'll share a link to the project's webpage in the chat, and also links to future events you can register on as well. We have a number of in-person events, which you'll have seen on those opening slides, which are focused on the harder to source and grow tree species. So do check these out. After both our speakers are presented, there'll be a Q&A discussion session, and we just ask that you all remain muted until both speakers have finished. Do feel free to use the chat for any queries. So both of our speakers this evening are from More Trees for Bath and North East Somerset, or BANES for short. And our first speaker is Richard Higgs, who has been director there for just over 6 months, having had a career in conservation management with the National Trust. He has a lifelong love of trees and lots of experience of working with volunteers. And he will tell you more about the organisation. So I'll now hand over to you, Richard, and just like to say welcome and thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Hilary. Yeah, no, very good to be here. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this, giving up your evening. Right, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Yeah, so I'm going to talk just for a little bit and give a bit of an introduction into who we are and what we do, and then I'll hand over to Emma. We'll talk about a little bit more on the specifics, and then we'll come back to me just to round up at the end. So who we are? We're a small charity. We're based in Bath, and as our name suggests, we work across Bath and North East Somerset. But actually, most of our focus has been in the city of Bath up until now. We were set up in 2008 by somebody called Adam Gretton, who's our founder, and Adam is now our chair of our trustees. And Adam and a group of friends, initially it was about planting trees, doing something for the environment. Got involved in a number of planting projects. And then in 2021, managed to find some funding, took on a first member of staff, actually Sandra, who's bottom left in your screen, who runs our nurseries. And then the focus actually turned to growing. So Adam was finding that he wasn't able to source trees that were grown locally, and so thought we should be actually thinking about growing our own. So that was the focus. We became a charity in 22, and then I joined last year in 23. So it was about September. So we sort of became a charity, had a board of trustees, and then I joined us joined as director. We've now got 15 nurseries. 5 of those are in schools, and I'll talk a little bit about how that works in a moment. And the big project for us is actually we're moving to a new site, our own site. At the moment, we are housed within the council parks department in Bath, but we're actually moving to our own site, and we're setting that up. We have a growing community of volunteers. Let's say three employees: Emma, myself, and Sandra, and a board of trustees. And in terms of volunteers, I never quite know exactly how many we've got, but probably 250 to 300, I would say, in all. And some do more time than others, but it's a large operation in terms of the sort of variety of volunteers that we work with and use. Over that time, we've planted over 14,000 trees in various locations around Bath, and we work with a number of other organisations. So a lot of it is about partnerships. So in terms of actually what we do, we collect seed. So we have a number of locations around the area where we go to each year. Most of them are semi-natural ancient woodland, and we've sort of built up that sort of portfolio of places where we know that we can collect native tree seed. We do focus on pretty well all native, so we have those places where we go to, and the seed collection is done through our volunteers. Then our growing operation, we have a model where we have a central hub, and then our community tree nurseries. So it's at our hub that we do the seed processing, the sowing, and then we grow those seedlings on for probably sort of 3 to 6 months, maybe a bit less. And it's just now at the moment actually that we're taking out those seedlings that have germinated and grown on. They get taken out to the community tree nurseries, where they're grown on for another year or 2 years. And we find actually that most trees are then lifted after 2 years, and then are used in our planting projects. So from there, we do our planting projects, and we sort of call it creating treescapes around the city. And we concentrate on planting sites where we can deliver most for people. So we are benefiting biodiversity and climate, but we're really focusing on urban areas, places where people live. So small planting schemes, mini forests, hedgerows, bulking up existing planting or little bits of new planting, but places where people live is where we really concentrate on, and engaging with the communities who live there. We then also do some aftercare, and Emma might mention it, but it's an area where we sometimes struggle to get volunteers to do the aftercare. People love planting trees. It's harder to get them to go back and weed them, but we do try and do some of the aftercare. And then we also have a program which runs alongside this, which is about engagement and awareness of the benefits that trees can give. And we do that mostly through schools. So we have a sort of schools outreach where we work with the schools where we have our nurseries. So those 5 schools with nurseries, we work with those children, and we're looking to expand that work as well. So just a last slide from me. This is our new site that we're moving to. In the foreground, you can see an area with some gravel, which is going to be a polytunnel, a 13-metre by 6-metre polytunnel. And then behind that, you can see the building, which is being finished this week, actually, but has been in construction over the last couple of months. So a wooden building, which will be office, volunteer mess room, pretty well sort of everything actually. And then behind that, a tool store. So a relatively small site, but something that we'll call our own and will be our central hub. So I think I'll hand back to Hilary to introduce Emma.
Thank you, Richard. That's lovely. Yes, so now I'd like to welcome Emma, who is the Volunteer and Engagement Officer. And she has over 25 years as a human resources professional. In early 2022, she started volunteering for More Trees Baines, and by the end of the year was employed in her current role. She enjoys working with people and feels a deep connection with what More Trees is doing and with the community they are building. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Hilary. Right, thank you. So I'll touch on, just how we recruit, engage, and work with our volunteers. So in terms of how we recruit our volunteers, I'd say probably social media is a really big outlet for us, especially Instagram. Facebook we do use. Twitter, obviously X now, not so much at all. We've got schools that seem to be on X, that we've got Community Tree Nurseries at, so we do tend to stay on that. But I do genuinely think that social media is a really good avenue for us. The tip I put there is about, if you don't have them, find some social media champions, people that might, repost your posts and share them or pop them on your stories. We tend to find that, a lot of local groups that are doing not necessarily the same things as us, but kind of growers or people that support nature and climate and things like that will share our stuff as well. And we will do the same back. And that really helps us reach a bigger audience. Obviously, flyers and posters, we still use that, bit traditional, but they do work. Certainly before we're planting, or before we've got, if we've got particular, events coming at some of our community tree nurseries, we'll put posters out advertising the days, and that still works well for us. The other way that we've, when we run our tree ID or seed collecting workshops, we make sure that we do try and put those out to as wide an audience as possible. Eventbrite, that does tend to work for us with using the right hashtags, etc. And we've certainly pulled in a few more extra volunteers through that. We also very much will pivot off our seasonal activities. So if we're seed collecting, we'll certainly sort of feed in through our Instagram and build up to that. So in terms of, launching through that, we have a workshop. Again, with tree planting, we certainly use that as a pivot to try and bring in more volunteers. Tree planting is very popular. And equally, the activities at the nurseries, people do seem to be drawn into planting out the baby trees when they go to the nurseries. Other ways in which we recruit, we'll go to local events. We've been fortunate enough to have a climate hub recently where in fact, we're in the picture. I think that's the top left that everyone can see, having a stall and putting some picture around about who we are and what we do. We were also benefited from being in the Abbey for Extraordinary Earth Day when the guy at Earth was there. And that worked. In fact, that worked really well, but it doesn't take much. We only got two volunteers from that, but they're two really regular volunteers. So those sorts of activities can work very well. Local fates, that sort of thing. If you've got local universities or colleges, definitely engage with them. We're lucky to have two universities near us. They have volunteering groups. They're pretty active, the students. And in fact, they very kindly came, and you'll see a picture of them. I think it's left in the middle. Their nature team came and helped us do some tree aftercare. So other idea, word of mouth, that tends to very much happen as well. I'll meet people that say, "Oh, I heard about you from so and so." And again, I think I just mentioned this before. We share other people's events around Bath. I'll share those from our local community, local brewers or community groups. And again, if we do that, they tend to help share back, and that helps to ultimately broaden our reach. Next slide, please, Richard.
Why is that not moving?
Are you stuck?
Yeah, I'm stuck. Ah, there we are.
Ah, perfect. So this is how we work and engage with our volunteers. So various ways that we work. We have a weekly hub session every Thursday, and that's a drop-in session, but which we have found really works well for us. Volunteers seem to like that. There's no pressure. They come or they don't. And that's definitely been something that, you certainly had feedback from volunteers saying they actually quite like that, the informality of it. And that's worked really well for us. But we're there every Thursday, 10 to 1, we're running a session. During the autumn, we'll have 2 lots of regular sessions, because that's when we're out doing our seed collecting. We tend to do our seed collecting on a Tuesday. We do try and get some weekend seed collecting, so obviously we can engage more people who are available at the weekends. But seed collecting on a Tuesday, and then we'll be processing on a Thursday. Other activities that we have with our volunteers and engagement is around our community tree nurseries. They tend to have monthly weekend sessions. We try and encourage them to do those at least once a month, get together, spend time at the nursery during key busy times, like planting out the saplings or tree lifting and healing in. There'll often be 2, sometimes 3 a month, depending how busy we are. We also try to bring our community tree nursery volunteers together, ideally quarterly. Doesn't always happen quarterly if we're busy, but we do try. And that's to get those particular group of volunteers together, so that we can kind of talk about, engage them with each other and talk about things that are going on at the nurseries. Doodle poll definitely works for getting the best time to get everybody together. The other thing that we do, we do have a nice Christmas social and a summer social, and we tend to have that as a bring and share. So we'll supply some drinks and a bit of food, but we encourage our volunteers to bring that with them as well. Keeps costs down, etc. But it's a really nice way of doing it. And I think if I look at the photos, the bottom left one, that's our big group selfie from our Christmas do. And I think actually the top one is actually the space that we've got at the Parks Department at the moment. Other ways that we'll, engage and communicate with our volunteer base, we do a biannual newsletter. I did a full, end of year one where we sort of went through almost month by month everything we'd done, and that was really, really well received. As brief as possible, lots of good pictures, but they really appreciated seeing and hearing how, all the activity that had gone on in those previous 12 months. Other tip is actually if you have a website, do keep your calendar of activities up to date, because, we certainly have volunteers looking at that. Is that my last bullet? I think so. Next slide, please, Richard. So how do we all learn? The big thing that we're really clear on with all of our volunteers is that there's no experience required. All volunteers are welcome. And we're quite big about that, because we want to encourage people to come along and learn and be part of what we do. We're always really clear that whatever we're doing, we'll show them how to do it, and they'll have support from us. So I would say that a lot of us, and us included, that we're learning on the job. And what is quite useful to do is just keep an eye on your volunteers. Some pick things up quickly, some don't. So you kind of got to spot that sort of thing. It's useful. You could always capture at the beginning of a session is to let's revisit some techniques and make that an inclusive thing, as opposed to a particular individual if they're struggling. Other things that we've done, Richard, in our Thursday sessions, we have a copy break, and Richard's quite often brought some tree ID for us to have a look at and do. And that's gone down actually really, really well with the volunteers. They've really enjoyed that. We also run workshops that support key activities that we do. For example, we'll do some tree ID workshops coming up soon, and I'll talk about that in a minute. but that's going to be geared as well towards you know, sourcing hard to find trees, and that's seed collecting, etc. Other workshops will have a seed collecting one before we do the seed collecting season. We've also got ones that we've done where we're looking at increasing our knowledge base. We had a biosecurity training towards the end of last year. I put tree diseases there. We haven't done that yet, but it's on the list of one we really want to do. The other thing is that, you know, when we have meetings and our quarterly CTN meetings, you know, we really encourage people to share their experience. You know, it's an opportunity for everyone to learn off of each other. You know, we'll also prepare and share guidance notes around things like tree lifting and healing techniques. So they've all got materials that they can take away with them. We've shared videos with our volunteers as well. And equally, we encourage everyone to share what they know. We're always learning. You know, I've certainly had, you know, we've had some very keen volunteers come who really do know their trees. And I think they probably know them better than I do. But yes, we encourage everyone to share what they know. Next slide, please, Richard. So here's a few tips for those hard to find and grow species. So I've tried to, in the pictures, put some in there that I think were mentioned. I think I've got some Gelderos there. You can see our baby yew trees. We're incredibly proud of those. They take a very, very long time to grow. It's actually some wild service berries that you can see on the bottom right. And on the left, that's us actually processing them. So, you know, so tips around that, you know, the tree ID workshops will be geared towards that. We're also, for the specific trees that, you know, we want to try and find that we're not getting, you know, finding it hard to get seeds from, we will put together some materials where you can really clearly see how to ID them. If I remember rightly, when we went to the wild service that we collected, it's just one woodland that we visit that we know it's there. But I made a point of bringing a printout that showed the shape of the leaves and what the berries look like. So we actually all really knew what we were looking for. And that was actually really helpful when it came for us finding the trees and then collecting. So yeah, during the summer months, I would say identify woodland locations where you might find the species that, you know, that you're looking for. I've put pin drop locations, and under that, more tree spotters initiative. That is actually something that we're just about to launch, which is effectively doing those first 2 bullet points. We're going to be putting, you know, for those who are keen, a special WhatsApp group together to, you know, for people that want to engage and help us find those hard to find trees. I would say plan a seed collecting trip at the opportune time. For example, you know, we're going to be going out in the summer months as well to make sure we can get wild cherry and hopefully some bird cherry. We've struggled getting those, but we're hoping again to find some trees and source those berries. Wych elm again, you know, that would be summer. And in September, you tend to find as well, you know, there's a point where the berries, you know, you want to get out there and get your berries September, early October as well. Definitely make sure that when you collect them, that you store them properly in between collecting and processing. I think that's quite important. What we've also done is those ones that we've collected that are valuable to us, like the wild service, for example, or even spindle. I always make sure if we collect those on a Tuesday that they're immediately processed and stratified on that Thursday, so there's not much delay. And what I would say, and this is from experience, that if there are seeds that are important to you, then delegate those potentially to an experienced volunteer. I have had some very, very, very tiny seeds go down a drain. So yeah, that's a top tip. I think I missed out our WhatsApp community, didn't I, around the engagement? Sorry, I've just realised that. But we do have, talking about the WhatsApp, we've moved all of our groups for our community trees into the WhatsApp community section. And actually that's working really, really well for us, because at the top of that is an announcement stream. And that means that if we post on there all the time, it means all of our volunteers are seeing the same information. And that's really proved. We've had loads of really positive feedback on that since we've done it, about everybody, you know, seeing the same stuff and really feeling part of that community. So that's been really good for us in terms of the engagement piece. Apologies, I'm skipping back and now coming forward again, but I remembered I'd forgotten that bit. Next slide, please, Richard. So just a few other tips, which if I haven't touched on now, I'm just throwing out there. You know, we do tend to begin before we have each, you know, certainly like our hub session, for example, and if we've got any new people, we make sure we introduce them, but we'll give a little briefing. We've got a whiteboard where we put in order of the priorities of what we want to do in that session. And again, that's a good time to just to revisit any techniques you want to revisit. Definitely run, if you're going to go out seed collecting, try and run some weekend sessions. It is really popular. We actually didn't run enough last year. I was constantly being asked when we were running them, and you know, we'll try and definitely run more this year. When you're planting out trees, try and plant and mulch at the same time. Planting is hugely popular, and tree aftercare is far less sexy, I think. We really struggled to get people to come along for those. That's been a little bit of hard work. This year we did both at the same time, and it went really well. In terms of planting and aftercare events, take a shelter, an event shelter. You can see ours in the picture there. That's actually a really nice idea for if you're inviting along, which we've also done, other small community groups. You know, we worked with Bath Mind and had a small group of their volunteers come and help us do some planting. And actually that shelter with some chairs gave them the opportunity just to sit and relax when they needed to or wanted to. And we found that's just a really nice thing to have there that works really well. If you do work with student volunteers at all, know their busy times and their exam times and work with their availability. I did try to run something with students around setting up a nursery, and I didn't have anyone show up. So it's a really good idea to make sure you know the right times to bring them along. I think it's kind of important to accept that, you know, some things appeal to people more than others. But I think that's where it's really important, which we found, is to build that core group of volunteers. And again, in that sense, identify and plan how to cover your slightly less appealing activities. Ours was tree aftercare. And we've obviously we've figured out how best to manage that piece. Is that me?
Yeah, back to me, I think.
Okay, thank you.
So just a couple of slides to finish up. So just thinking about the future for more trees, we're looking at the next sort of 3 years, really, developing a plan for that. We're thinking about, in terms of our planting, we're thinking about orchards, we're thinking about food forests, thinking about how we might diversify sort of species and how we plant. We're thinking about how we might propagate rare species, and that might be rare in terms of the species, or it might be particular specimens, so either very large or old specimens in the locality, or even trees that have a cultural significance in the local area, whether we might propagate from those. There are some trees that were planted by the suffragettes in Bath, just as an example. So that's something that we're thinking about. As an organisation, we're thinking about how we fit in the local landscape. There are lots and lots of small organisations around Bath doing all sorts of different things. So it's really important to think about how we work with them, not just replicating what everybody else is doing, but thinking about where we can really add value. We're thinking about how we might diversify our volunteering, which is you know, a really tricky thing to do, actually. But we're thinking hard about how we might do that and have a more diverse sort of volunteer base. I think a lot of that is about working in partnerships. So we're definitely thinking about how we can work together with others and work more effectively, and that includes with funding as well. Particularly around looking at how we fund ourselves, and also getting really clear on where we focus and where we don't. As I say, as a small organisation with all of our resources come from charitable giving. We have to be really careful about where we focus our work and not spread ourselves too thinly. And our future, we think, is likely to be around a sort of supported volunteering model. So there are organisations which are working horticultural therapy around Bath, and there are other organisations which help people get into work, but there's quite a big gap in between where people just want to come along and maybe develop skills, maybe develop confidence around working, and we can sort of be that step from those who need more support to come along and as a sort of more supported volunteering model. So that's where we think we're heading. So last slide, really, just to sum up. I mean, I think tree growing really does lend itself to volunteering. People love it, and there are lots of different parts to it, from seed collecting to right through to planting, and each element actually has different skills and can deliver different benefits. So it is an activity that really does lend itself, but we also look beyond that. So volunteers for digital marketing or finance management or any element of running the charity, we would be interested in people supporting us. It absolutely enables us to deliver our work and deliver the impact. We like to think we're a small organisation, but we deliver big impact, and we absolutely could not do it without our volunteers. And we know that provides much needed opportunities. So we do know that there is a demand out there for people who want to do something for the environment. They want to get out. They want to meet with people. So it is providing that. And just the last line at the bottom there, I think, is really important. Volunteering is not. It's not a means to an end. It's not volunteers who help us deliver our work. Volunteering is actually what we do, and it's not just how we do it. So thank you for listening. I'll hand back to Hilary.
Thank you very much, Richard and Emma. That's wonderful. So just before we go to questions, I just want to go back to you, Emma, if I may, yes, for a moment. And because you have some information sort of relating to how you enable volunteers to kind of learn about the harder to source and grow tree species, which of course is what the Growing Diversity Project is really focused on. And it would just be really lovely to hear just a few sort of ideas or experiences, I guess, that you've had with around that.
Yeah, of course. So I can, give you our experience from those trees that were listed in that, that box, the hard to find and the hard to grow.
Yeah.
So in terms of Guelder Rose, our experience is that we plenty of seeds. We get to collect plenty of berries, but what we're finding is that, they do take 2 years to grow. And we follow the Forestry Commission guidelines. First year, they tend to be in the fridge or outside, whichever way you do it for your stratifying. What we've experienced is year 1, apparently they tend to put their roots down, but you won't see them. And in year 2 is when you might start seeing them. So we haven't managed to grow any yet, but, we're learning that actually, that some of the seeds that we've kept, we were right to have kept. They do take that long to stratify. You will be waiting 2 years before you see anything. So that's our experience of Guelder Rose. The small leaf lime, will agree, we haven't found any seeds. That's going to be on our Tree Spotters initiative. I think we found one tree but had no success on that front, so we will be looking as well. The wayfaring tree, again, we haven't found a lot of seed, but when we have, following the Forestry Commission guidelines in terms of stratifying weeks, etc., we found they grow. White beam, that was another one listed. We have found white beam, but we're fairly sure that they're probably planted white beam as opposed to naturalized. But again, we've managed to grow them. They do grow, I think they grow quite slow. Am I right, Richard? I think that's right. In terms of the wild service trees, again, we've only found them in this one woodland from the pictures that you saw. They are incredibly hard to process. That's certainly what we found, because the seeds are tiny, really tiny. So you do have to be incredibly careful when you process those. As yet, we haven't grown any. We'll hope this seed batch will be successful. I think we've had wayfaring tree from forest start, but we've subsequently found that they became diseased. Although we managed to grow them, they had become diseased. I think the other one of the others on the list was holly. Again, there's plenty of holly seeds. Berries, we find them. You do need to collect them at the right time. You've got to make sure that the berry is not too hard. It can be really tempting to collect them, but do be patient and collect them when they're the right, when you can process them easily. We found, and we have grown some, and they're super cute, but they do take 2 years. So we do have to be really patient with them. We've also, some of these, we've done experimented. We've done this with some Guelder Rose as well for this year, but we've put some holly seeds actually just in trays, and then put them out in our cages to protect them, but just they're outside just to see what happens as well. I think sometimes a bit of experimenting, is not a bad idea. The wild pear, we've not tried to find any. Wych elm, we're going to be looking this summer. I think it's quite important to get the ID right on those. You can collect a lot of it, but it should be slightly brown, and you should sow it straight away. So a thin layer, and then add a very thin layer of compost on top, and it's important to keep it moist. And again, my understanding is in year one, from our experience, year one, they germinate. I can't understand my notes. Apologies. Year two, I've missed it out. But they are slower growing. And actually, that's what my notes say. So they're not always viable. So I think the first year that when we collected some, they grew. The second year, they didn't. So they're not always, and that's our understanding, is they're not always a viable collection. So that can happen. For you, we have managed to actually find quite a lot of good yew trees around. They seem to be in churchyards. Seems to be a really popular for a yew tree, but we have managed to collect a good amount of berries. Again, you need to be patient with yew. They take 2 to 3 years. You saw that little tray. I think that's year 2. Even those little babies. So keep seeds of ones like these that take a long time to grow. Don't throw them away. Keep them in the fridge or wherever it is that you have them. And maybe in the year 2 of them, put them in a seed tray and see how they get on. So there's a few hot tips.
Yeah.
We're not getting everything either, but that's some feedback around our experience of those.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you so much for those tips. So if anyone has any questions around volunteering or the harder to source and grow species, anything that you'd like to ask, either Richard or Emma, please do. You can either use the raised hand option in the reaction menu or put your question in the chat. or if there's anything you'd like to share as well around volunteering that you think might be of use or help to other people. So we have a question here from EM. Sorry, is that Emma? I'm not sure.
There's Ellie.
Ellie
Mayhew.
Yes. Hi, Ellie. Did you want to ask your question or would you like me to read it out?
I'm happy to ask it. So I just wanted to know a bit about your experience with managing biosecurity risk with having volunteers and having kind of increased footfall in the nursery, because obviously I suppose you can, there's only so much that's in your power to do in terms of training. And then, what's your experience been? Has it been quite positive? Do people understand the importance of this? Thank you.
Richard, do you want to talk about what we're doing at the hub?
Yeah, so it's a good question. We did run a biosecurity session, and we had a fair number of volunteers join that. I think the way we approached it was to think about where our biggest risks were around biosecurity. And we actually think some of our biggest risks are when we go out to woodlands. And then we're coming, back to maybe our hub or going out to other nurseries. And probably the biggest risk is Emma, Sandra, and myself, who are going out from our hub out to every nursery. So I think volunteers who are working at just at one nursery, all right, they're going out to other places, but at least they're staying at one place. But it's when we're actually moving around. So the advice we got that probably the best thing you can do is just to clean your shoes. So have a sort of regime of cleaning off your shoes. And we've just invested. We just got a grant actually. I'm trying to remember where it came from.
Can't remember.
Yeah, I should know this. We've just had a grant for £500, which is enabling us to buy some biosecurity kits, which is basically brushes and some sprayers and things. So we're going to have a sprayer in the van, so we can spray the wheels, we can clean off boots, and we can just try and do what we can. And at the end of the day, I think you've just got to be a bit pragmatic about it and do what you can. The other thing is around water storage, around biosecurity. So keeping water covered and thinking about your water. So I don't know if that answers it very well, but I think it's being practical. It's letting volunteers know why it is that you're doing it, and we've actually had really positive responses, and the volunteers seem to enjoy learning about the issues and learning about what they can do, but then being pragmatic about what you can actually put in place.
And we will be having part of this grant will pay for a kit that will go, if I'm right, outside the front of each of our nurseries, and then the entrance for people to basically make sure they clean their boots properly before they go in. We're in the process of putting those together and getting those to our nurseries.
Yeah, so boot cleaning, really, I think it's sort of transfer of soil from one place to the other is probably the thing to concentrate on, and water storage.
Perfect, thank you. That's really helpful. Thanks, both of you.
Thank you for a great question. And then Anne, would you like to speak, or would you like me to read it out?
I can see the question, so I can answer.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we can. I just always like to invite the person to, but it's following on with biosecurity and what do you do about four-legged visitors such as dogs? Is that an issue?
Yeah, at the moment we don't have any dogs at our central hub. And I don't actually know this, but I guess it's probably because we're in the council offices, so we wouldn't be allowed to have dogs coming in. So it's probably quite helpful. But it might be something we need to think about in our new hub. We will need to have a policy on whether people are allowing dogs to come in. Yeah, I don't know, Emma. I don't know if you got thoughts on it. I don't imagine we would probably not necessarily for biosecurity, but for
Yeah, we haven't been asked actually. In our community tree nurseries, actually to date, nobody's asked if they could bring a dog at all. Yeah, so I guess that is genuinely something we would have to think about. You know, we're certainly in where our new hub will be. We're literally, once you get into the ground where the hub is, that's where our, you know, boot washing, you know, area will be. So immediately people turn up, wash your feet, you know, pop your dog in the sink. Not, but no, I guess, yeah, not sure. We'll have to think about that, won't we?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Anne. Robin, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, yeah, I'm from TreeLink in Stirling.
Hi.
Hi. So you mentioned about water storage and keep it covered. Last year we had a very dry May and June period and weren't able to actually water our trees because there's no water, there's no running water on site. So what we've done this year is we've put some bins around to collect water. Now it's rainwater. I haven't wanted to put the bin lids on because I thought the water would go stagnant, but you're saying water storage and keep it covered. So can you tell me a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the reason now, but
my recollection, sorry to interrupt, Richard, my recollection was interesting. He said was actually, you know, you want water to keep flowing and moving, and actually if it's sitting there, that's not ideal because actually, you know, I don't, that was my recollection. I don't know if that was the same as yours, Richard, but actually, you know, if water is just going to sit there in a tank and not get used, that's when it sort of becomes stagnant and it actually becomes a potential biosecurity risk.
Yeah, and I thought also by leaving the lids off, it would allow fresh rainfall to sort of fall in it, as opposed to if we put the lids on, then it would become stagnant.
Yeah, I probably need to follow up on this, but it might be UV getting to it, or it might be that you just get, you know, leaves and other things getting inside it. But I seem to remember there was definitely a, you know, it's better to keep it covered. But Emma's right. It's, you know, if you can use it and keep it flowing, then you're less likely to get problems with it. But definitely better to use rainwater. We're installing rainwater systems into our new nursery. We have them in quite a lot of our community nurseries. So wherever they have roofs, we try and collect, you know, mostly in IBCs, in the big bulk storage tanks.
And where we're situated, we can actually use that sort of stored rainwater. But when it becomes very dry up here, there was those couple of months last year where we couldn't, so we had no water, and therefore we sort of thought, oh god, we couldn't afford to we don't have the room to have our own polytunnel and water collection system. Is there a reason why we shouldn't use that water as long as it's smelling okay?
I'm really not sure, but I would have thought if it's smelling okay, you're probably right.
Obviously we'd have to, you know, do hand washing and all the rest after.
Yeah, I think my view would be if you're not going to water, then chances are the trees are going to die anyway, aren't they? So
yes.
You're probably better off using it actually.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions at all?
I think Anne is waving.
Hi, Anne.
Hi, sorry, I can't find my show hand button.
That's okay, that's fine.
I was at a meeting with Sarah Green from Forest Research a couple of weeks ago, having an in-depth discussion about juniper. And the reason for keeping water storage covered is to actually stop fungal diseases getting into the water system. That was her main focus of keeping water covered. Because if you've got any trees around and they are vectors for any of the fungi that are a bit of a nightmare on a nursery, they can get in, and particularly the juniper, part of its life cycle is to have I'm going to pronounce this wrong, a zoite or a zoo something or other, which is like this little wriggly thing that's in water droplets, and you can get splash up coming. So even if you've got puddles on the surface of the nursery, if those little zooites are present in the water because disease has come in, they can even splash up and infect root trainers on benches and that kind of thing. So she was really hot on a lot of, but then that's what they do, on these kinds of diseases, and that was my understanding as to why it was so important to keep water covered.
Brilliant, thank you. I knew there'd be somebody out there who'd know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Anne. That's really useful. Was that, can I just ask, was that a webinar, or is it was just a meeting you were talking about?
It was just a meeting. I'm a contractor with the Woodland Trust, and the Woodland Trust had asked her to come along to have, and there were various of us from different Woodland Trust nurseries. So yeah.
Lovely, thank you. So Quentin, did you want to share your comment, or I can read it out? He's talking about smelly water. Oh, he doesn't have a mic. Okay, so Quentin's saying that if the water's smelly, it's anoxic and yucky and contains spores and bacteria, pathogens likely to harbour nasty bugs for humans and requires looking after. And if you use it, to make sure it's well aerated.
Okay, I think that's a helpful comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Keeps goldfish in large containers, keeps the mosquitoes at bay.
Okay, any other questions at all? Checking along the top. Don't think so. Can you? Sorry, Emma, were you going to say something?
No.
No. Okay.
Anne's got her hand up again.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask a question about what sort of facilities you have for your volunteers. You know, is there a toilet? Is there tea making facilities? Is there a sort of an area for socialising?
Go on, Emma.
Okay. Well, where we currently are, we're hosted at the council department, council parks department, and yes, we have all of those. We're fortunate enough to, toilets, and there's a proper breakout room for us to go and sit and have a proper coffee break, etc. And we certainly will have that, though that's at the new hub. We're going to have, we've got the new hut. I think you saw a picture of it a bit earlier being built, but that will provide us as a kind of we'll have tea making facilities in there, an opportunity to be inside, to sit, have coffee, etc. We're planning on putting a compost loo on site as well.
Yeah, and just to add, I think it is really important, because it's recognizing that volunteers are often coming for the social experience of it, and you absolutely need to think about people's welfare. The logistics can get quite complicated when we're out on site, and thinking about if you're out at a planting site, whether there's access to toilets or even washing facilities. I mean, it's why we take shelter, we take flasks of hot water and provide tea and coffee and biscuits and everything. And it takes time and effort and resources, but it's actually really important to think about all those things. So
tea, coffee, biscuits are always really warmly received.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Teresa, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, sorry. I'm going to ask a very basic question because we've just started as a group. What was the most favourite? What do you get the most input from volunteers? Which activity, which workshop does, really draw people in? What's your initial, which one did you start with other than tree planting? What's after that?
I would have to say probably, well, the two that are, Tree ID, that's hugely popular, but we'll also get people come along to that we never see again. I won't lie about that. Mm. And then, the seed collecting workshop, that's not as well attended, but we do encourage people to come along, if they haven't been out seed collecting with us. So yeah, I mean, definitely Tree ID is a bit of, that's a popular one.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question, actually. Just got a couple more minutes before we need to end. So if anyone else has got any questions, there's a couple of comments coming up. Seed collection has been very popular with your project. Ellie, is that Ellie again? Yeah, that's good to know. Christina, did you want to ask a question? Hi, Christina. I can read.
Hi,
Hello,
and
hi,
everyone.
nice to see you.
Yes, so yeah, we're in the process of putting all together all our biosecurity stuff. And I'm in the process of ordering signs, when to go outside each of we've got 2 areas at our nursery. But I can't find any guidance on what should be written on the signs. I mean, I assume that it has to state that it's biosecure area and, indicate that people need to use bleach cleaning facilities before they enter. But I can't find any guidance on what else should be on the signs, and wonder if anyone can point me in the direction of finding that information.
Yeah, I don't actually know. I'm just trying to think. We could go back to it was Phil, wasn't it, who did our training? So we could perhaps ask that, and that could be shared if any guidance. I would have thought the Forestry Commission might be a.
Yeah, no, I couldn't find anything. I found a poster for a biosecurity kit, but not the sign to put on the gate.
Okay, yeah, sorry, Emma, I don't know if you've got anything, but apart from the Forestry Commission, we could go back to the person who did our training. They might be able to suggest something.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've got as far as drafting ours yet. But yeah, I'm not sure what instructions, the why instructions, I guess safety thing that information you might want to put on. I guess that's logically the sorts of things that would go on ours.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to being pragmatic about, what's the most important thing you want people to do, and just really concentrating on that, because I think if you have a sign with lots of information,
yeah,
people either won't read it or they won't take the action you want. But if boot cleaning is the most important thing, then have that, really front and center with something.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good question. So we're just sort of out of time, but Robin, you if you have a quick question, we could probably do that just before we end.
I'm not sure it is. It was actually about the nurseries in the schools and how you went about starting that, really.
Emma, you probably know more.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. So, yeah, I think that one of I can't remember who approached who anyway, but we had one school that, that was interested in doing that with us. I mean, you don't actually need a lot. A lot of the schools local to us have forest school. I don't know what others have, but one reasonable size grow bed is all you need. And a lot of schools actually came to us wanting to, after we did the original one with one of the schools. I think it was even opened by, might have been the mayor of Bath. So it had a bit of attention and had a little newspaper article, and that kind of was useful to pivot off to put, you know, a grow bed in other schools. Some of the schools have a really good amount of space because they're growing vegetables and doing other things, and, you know, have got a nice forest school area. Others, on the other hand, have very little space, and we just kind of work around that. You know, and actually we do grow quite a good amount. We get quite a good amount of trees from them, actually.
Do you give them little seedlings to grow on, or are they helping right from the seed processing?
Good question. To start with, we were giving them the baby trees, the little saplings to plant, and they were also helping, you know, when it came to kind of lifting them. But what we are subsequently doing is also trying to grow the programme so that the children get that whole experience. So, you know, we have taken root trainers and nuts for them to plant and compost and stuff, and taken them on little walks around the school. So yeah, we are genuinely trying to give them the whole spread of activity as well. And we've got a couple of, you know, consultants that work with us running them, and a good schools volunteer. So yeah, I mean, I mean, I've been to the schools. It's an absolute delight to do. The children are lovely, you know, and they seem to get a lot out of it.
And is it all primary or is it secondary as well?
Bit of both. Okay. So I would say age ranges probably between 6 and 11.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I'd just like to thank both Richard and Emma for being here and sharing such useful information this evening. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you everyone for coming and asking questions, as ever. I will obviously send an email with a link to the recording once it's ready, and further links for upcoming events as well, and updates and news to keep you all in the loop. But have a good evening, everyone. Take care. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.